There is a moment that happens before the moment anyone else sees. It happens in the body, in the field. In the electromagnetic signature, your heart is already broadcasting before your mind has caught up, before the room has registered your presence, before the decision has finished forming in your conscious awareness. And in that invisible moment, something is already being transmitted. Something is already reaching out ahead of you into the space you are about to enter, into the opportunity you are about to meet, into the life you are moving toward, or the life you keep almost touching and then pulling back from. Here is what I want to show you today. The people you watch who seem to move without hesitation, who never appear to be waiting for the right moment, who step forward when you are still calculating whether the ground is solid enough. They are not more motivated than you. They do not carry some surplus of willpower that you were denied. They are not made from different material. What is different is something measurable, something that operates below the level of thought and above the level of choice. Their energy field has locked into a specific broadcast frequency, a frequency that yours has not been shown yet, until now. Because what you are going to understand by the end of this transmission is not a motivational principle. It is a field principle. It is the quantum mechanics of what actually happens in the gap between readiness and action, and why that gap is not a problem of motivation at all. It is a problem of broadcast. It is a problem of what your electromagnetic field is transmitting in the precise moment before you move, and what that transmission is assembling around you before you have taken a single step. You have been waiting to feel ready. And I want you to understand with real precision what waiting actually does to your field. Not as metaphor, not as inspiration, as physics. Let's begin there. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field. This is not a spiritual claim. It is one of the most replicated measurements in bioelectromagnetics. The field produced by the electrical activity of your heart extends measurably beyond the surface of your skin, in all directions, reaching several feet into the space around your body. Researchers at the HeartMath Institute have documented this field using magnetometers, instruments sensitive enough to detect the magnetic component of your heart's signal from outside the body. This is the most powerful electromagnetic field generated by any organ in the human body. It is approximately 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical field produced by the brain. And its magnetic component is measurable at distances that, in a room, place it in direct contact with the fields of everyone around you. This field is not static. It is not a uniform hum. It carries information. The specific pattern of your heart's electrical activity, the rhythm, the shape of the waveform, the interval between beats, all of this is encoded into the field your heart broadcasts. And that pattern changes dramatically depending on what you are experiencing emotionally, what you are anticipating, what you are bracing for, and critically, what you have decided about yourself and your direction. When researchers measure heart rate variability, which is the precise timing variation between successive heartbeats, they find two fundamentally different patterns. The first is coherent. The waveform is smooth, rhythmically ordered, almost sinusoidal. The intervals between beats rise and fall in a regular, flowing pattern. The second is incoherent. The waveform is jagged, erratic, irregular. The intervals between beats spike and drop without rhythm or order. These two patterns produce two fundamentally different electromagnetic broadcasts. A coherent heart field radiates outward in an organized, high-amplitude signal. It is, in the language of physics, a carrier wave. It is structured enough to carry information across the space between bodies. An incoherent heart field radiates outward in a disorganized, lower amplitude signal. The information it carries is scrambled. The broadcast is, in effect, static. Now here is where this becomes personal to you. If this is landing for you, here is something I want to share. Have you spent years trying to feel lit up again? Visualizations, affirmations, vibration work, and the light still won't hold? Every one of those methods is telling you to push harder, do more, add another technique. It's not working because the issue isn't that you don't have enough light. 6 specific patterns are sitting on top of it. They're called the frequencies of forgetting. The remembering field, a quantum guide to returning to the light. You forgot you were carrying walks through all 5 parts of getting those patterns off you. Every tool you used tried to add more light. This one lifts what's been sitting on the light you already carry. The longer you wait, the harder they get to clear. So go open it tonight. The link is in the pinned comment below. Now, back to the thread we were following. The state of waiting. The state of holding yourself at the edge of action. The state of, I'll move when I feel ready, produces a specific and measurable pattern in the heart's rhythm. It is not coherent. It is not the smooth, organized carrier wave of someone who has resolved their direction. It is the jagged, irregular pattern of a system in conflict. A system that wants 2 incompatible things simultaneously: to move forward and to remain safe from the consequences of moving forward. And that pattern is what your field is broadcasting into the space around you right now, in the moments when you are waiting. Not your intention, not your desire, not the vision you hold of who you could become. The field broadcasts the actual state of the system. And the actual state of the system, when you are waiting to feel ready, is conflict. This is the thing that changes when you understand what is happening at the field level. It is not that you need to manufacture motivation. It is not that you need to silence the fear or push through the resistance with willpower. Those approaches treat the symptom. What you need is to understand the broadcast. Because the moment you understand what your field is transmitting, you can begin to change it. And a changed broadcast produces a changed field. A changed field produces a changed set of what is possible to reach you. What you radiate, reality assembles around, not as poetry, as mechanism. Let me show you the mechanics more precisely. When your heart is in a coherent state, several things happen simultaneously in your physiology that do not happen in an incoherent state. The coherent signal from the heart travels up through the vagus nerve and influences the brain's activity directly. This is called the afferent pathway, the signal moving from heart to brain rather than the more familiar direction. When that signal is coherent, the frontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, clear decision-making, and the integration of complex information, becomes more synchronized with the heart's rhythm. Your perception sharpens. Your capacity to read a situation accurately increases. Your ability to act with precision rather than reactivity goes up. In an incoherent state, the opposite occurs. The frontal cortex becomes less synchronized. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, becomes more dominant. Your perception narrows to threat assessment. You are not looking for opportunity. You are scanning for danger. And in that narrowed, threat-focused, perceptual state, you cannot see the opening that is right in front of you. You cannot feel the moment that is available. You are waiting for safety in a state that cannot recognize it when it arrives. This is why waiting to feel ready is self-defeating at a physiological level. The state of waiting produces the neurological conditions under which readiness becomes impossible to perceive. You are waiting for a feeling that your current broadcast is preventing you from accessing. The people who act before they feel ready have not solved this by having more courage. They have solved it by being in a different field state. Their broadcast is coherent. Their heart-brain synchronization is active. Their perception is open rather than narrowed. They are not fearless. They are coherent. And coherence is something you can generate deliberately. It is not a personality trait. It is a physiological state that can be entered through specific, learnable practices. But before we get to the practice, I want to take you somewhere deeper, because understanding the mechanics of the field is only part of what needs to shift. There is something underneath the weighting that we need to look at clearly. Something that the field is actually broadcasting when you are in that state of holding yourself back. And it is not what most people think it is. It is not fear of failure. Or rather, it is not only fear of failure. There is something more specific happening. Something that your electromagnetic field is encoding into every broadcast you make in the moments when you are at the edge of action and choosing to wait. It is an unresolved identity signal. Here is what I mean. Your heart's electromagnetic field broadcasts the actual state of your internal coherence. And your internal coherence is directly tied to the degree of alignment between who you have decided you are and how you are currently behaving. When those two things are in alignment, when your declared identity and your actual behavior are moving in the same direction, your field becomes coherent. The signal is clean. The carrier wave is organized. The broadcast is clear. When those two things are in conflict, when you know who you want to be and you are not acting like that person, when you have a direction but you are not moving in it, your field becomes incoherent. Not because you are broken, not because you lack willpower, but because your electromagnetic system is, quite literally, trying to broadcast two incompatible signals at once. And two incompatible signals do not average out into something clear. They produce interference. They produce static. And static is what you are radiating into the quantum field in every moment that you are waiting to feel ready. The quantum field, the underlying fabric of possibility that your broadcast is reaching into, does not respond to your intentions. It does not read your vision board. It does not receive your wishes. It responds to your coherent signal. It assembles around the frequency that is actually being transmitted, not the frequency you wish you were transmitting. And when what is being transmitted is the static of an unresolved identity, the quantum field has nothing organized to respond to. The possibilities that could reach you cannot find a clear signal to lock onto. This is the precise reason why people who want change with genuine intensity can remain stuck for years. The intensity of the wanting does not produce coherence. In many cases, it produces the opposite, because wanting from a place of not having is itself an incoherent state. It is broadcasting lack. It is transmitting the signal of someone who does not yet have the thing they want, and the quantum field assembles around that signal faithfully. What breaks the pattern is not more wanting. It is not more motivation. It is a shift in the identity signal. A decision made with genuine resolution about who you are now, not who you will become, not who you might be under better conditions. Who you are in this moment, decided and committed. Because that decision, when it is real, when it is not a wish dressed in declaration language, but an actual interior commitment, changes the broadcast. It shifts the heart's field toward coherence. It aligns the signal. And an aligned signal is what the quantum field can respond to. This is what the people you watch moving without hesitation have done. They have made the decision. Not dramatically, not in a moment of peak inspiration. Quietly, internally, with a kind of finality that does not require external validation. They have decided who they are, and because the decision is made, the field is coherent. Because the field is coherent, they can perceive the moment clearly. Because they can perceive the moment clearly, they move. Not because they feel ready, because they have resolved the identity question, and resolution produces coherence, and coherence produces the capacity to act. Now let me show you something about the specific texture of the waiting state, because I want you to recognize it in your own field. Not to judge it, to see it clearly. Because you cannot change a broadcast you cannot see. When you are waiting to feel ready, there is a very particular quality to the internal state. It presents itself as wisdom. It feels like discernment. It has the texture of patience, of thoughtfulness, of not rushing into something before you have properly prepared. And there is a version of that internal state that is genuine discernment. There are moments when waiting is the correct signal, when the field is telling you something important about timing or direction or alignment. But there is another version. And most of the time, when people say they are waiting to feel ready, this is the version that is actually operating. It is not discernment. It is the mind's protection mechanism presenting itself as discernment. It is the part of your internal system that has learned through years of accumulated experience that commitment is dangerous. That specific desire can be specifically failed. That if you declare who you are and then fail to become that person, the failure is not just a failed attempt. It reaches into the identity itself. It threatens the self-concept at a level that feels existential. And so the mind, doing what it believes is its job, keeps the identity vague, keeps the commitment just slightly out of reach, keeps the dream at a comfortable distance where it can be desired without being risked. And it calls this wisdom. It calls this not being impulsive. It calls this waiting for the right moment. The right moment never comes, not because the universe is withholding it, but because the field state that produces the perception of the right moment, coherence, clarity, open perception, cannot be generated from within the waiting state. The waiting state produces the neurological and electromagnetic conditions that make the right moment invisible, even when it is present. If this transmission is reaching something real in you, if you can feel the truth of this in your own field, take a moment to like this video and subscribe so we can keep going deeper together. Now let's continue. I want to tell you about two people. Their names are Mara and Elias. They were not remarkable people in any way that the world would have recognized from the outside. They were people like you. People who wanted something real. People who had been standing at the edge of a decision for longer than they could comfortably admit. Mara had been standing at the edge of hers for 3 years. She knew what she wanted to build. She had known for 3 years. She had done the research. She had the skills. She had, if she were honest, everything she needed to begin. But she had also developed, over those 3 years, an elaborate and internally consistent architecture of reasons why the time was not yet right. She needed more experience. The market conditions were uncertain. She should wait until she had more savings. She should wait until she felt more confident. She should wait until the version of herself that was ready to do this thing had arrived. What Mara did not know, because no one had shown it to her, was that her waiting had a measurable quality, not just a psychological quality, a field quality. In the moments when she was closest to the edge of action, in the moments when the possibility was most visible and most available, her heart rate variability would shift into an incoherent pattern. Her field would become static, and from within that static, the possibility would seem to recede. The moment that had felt close would seem to require more preparation. The confidence she had almost felt would seem to need more time to fully arrive. She was not imagining this. The perception was real. But the perception was being generated by the field state, not by the actual conditions of the external world. The external conditions were not the problem. The broadcast was the problem. Elias had a different relationship with the edge. He was not fearless. He felt the same pull toward safety that Mara felt. He had the same internal architecture of reasons why waiting might be wise. But somewhere, at some point that he could not have precisely identified, he had made a decision that changed the quality of his broadcast. He had decided, quietly and without ceremony, that he was the person who moved, not the person who would move when conditions were right. The person who moves. Present tense. Decided tense. And that decision, because it was real, because it was not a performance or a declaration made in an emotional moment that dissolved by the following week, had shifted his field. His heart rate variability in the moments before action was different from Mara's, not dramatically different in the way a biometric readout would look alarming. Subtly different. The pattern was more ordered. The signal was more coherent. And from within that coherence, his perception of the same external conditions that Mara found overwhelming was different. He could see the opening. He could feel the moment. Not because the moment was objectively clearer, but because his field state had produced the neurological conditions under which the moment could be perceived. He moved. Not because he felt ready, because he had resolved the question of who he was, and that resolution had produced a field that could perceive the path. Mara eventually moved too. But it took something specific to shift her. It was not a surge of inspiration. It was not better external conditions. It was a moment of genuine seeing, a moment when she recognized, with a clarity that felt almost physical, that the waiting was not protecting her, that the vagueness she was maintaining to keep herself safe from specific failure was the same vagueness that was preventing her from becoming anything specific, that she could not simultaneously protect herself from the experience of failing and build something real. That these two objectives were, at the level of the field, incompatible. In that moment of seeing, something shifted in her broadcast. The decision she had been avoiding crystallized into something real. She did not feel ready. She felt resolved, and resolved is a different frequency entirely. What Mara discovered, And what I want you to feel in your own body as you hear this is that resolution and readiness are not the same state. Readiness is a feeling. It is contingent on conditions. It requires the external world to arrange itself in a particular way before it can be accessed. Resolution is a field state. It is not contingent on conditions. It is generated from within, through the act of deciding who you are and committing to that decision with enough genuine depth that it changes the pattern of your heart's broadcast. You have been waiting for readiness. What is available to you is resolution. And resolution does not require better conditions. It requires only the decision. Let's go into the practice now, because understanding this at the level of concept is not enough. The field does not change through intellectual understanding. It changes through direct experience. And what I want to give you is a way to generate the specific field state that Elias was operating from. Not as a simulation, as a real shift in your electromagnetic broadcast. Find a comfortable position. If you are sitting, let your spine be long, but not rigid. If you are lying down, let your body be fully supported. Take one breath and let it be a releasing breath, not a controlled breath, just a release. Let whatever has been held in your chest or your shoulders or your jaw begin to soften. Now bring your attention to your heart, not metaphorically, physically. Bring your awareness to the center of your chest. You may feel a warmth there, or a subtle pulsing, or simply a sense of presence. Whatever you feel is correct. You are not trying to manufacture a sensation. You are simply directing your attention. Now I want you to breathe as if the breath is moving in and out through the center of your chest. Inhale slowly to a count of about 5 seconds, as if the air is entering through the heart center. Exhale slowly to a count of about 5 seconds, as if the air is leaving through the heart center. This is not a complex technique. It is a specific form of attention that has been shown in research settings to shift the heart's rhythm toward coherence within minutes. As you breathe this way, I want you to bring to mind a feeling, not a thought, not a plan, a feeling. Specifically, the feeling of genuine appreciation, not gratitude as a concept, the actual felt sense of appreciation for something real in your life, something specific, a person, a moment, a quality of light, a sound, a texture, something that, when you bring it to mind, produces an actual felt warmth in your chest. Let that feeling be present alongside the breath. You are not performing this. You are generating it. And as you generate it, something is happening in your electromagnetic field that is measurable. The heart's rhythm is beginning to shift. The waveform is becoming more ordered. The carrier wave is becoming cleaner. The broadcast is becoming more coherent. Stay with this for a moment. Now, from within this state, from within this coherent field, I want you to make a decision. Not a wish, not a hope, a decision about who you are, not who you will become, who you are now, in this moment, with this breath, with this field. One sentence, simple and direct. I am the person who moves, or I am the person who builds, or I am the person who creates. Whatever the specific declaration is for you, let it form in your awareness now, and let it be a declaration made from the feeling in your chest, not from the calculating part of your mind. Say it internally. Feel what happens in your chest when you say it. Notice whether it lands with the quality of resolution or whether it feels like a performance. If it feels like a performance, that is information. It means the declaration is ahead of the actual decision. The actual decision is still being protected from. And that is okay. That is where the work is. The work is not to force the feeling of resolution. The work is to find the specific place where the protection is operating and to see it clearly. Because seeing it clearly is itself the beginning of the shift. If it lands with the quality of resolution, even a quiet and tentative resolution, let that be enough. You do not need a surge of certainty. You need a genuine interior commitment, however small, however quiet. A small, genuine commitment produces more coherence than a large, performed declaration. The field reads the actual state, not the performance. Take one more breath through the heart center, and then let the practice settle. You have just generated a real shift in your electromagnetic broadcast. Not permanently, not without maintenance, but actually. The field was different in those minutes than it was before, and you can return to this state. You can practice it until it becomes the default broadcast rather than the exception. Now let me take you into the deeper mechanics of what changes when the identity signal becomes coherent. Because there is a layer of this that most people never reach. And it is the layer that explains why some people seem to create momentum that builds on itself, while others seem to work just as hard and remain in the same place. The electromagnetic field your heart broadcasts is not only influencing your own neurological state, it is reaching into the space around you and interacting with the fields of every person and every system you encounter. This is not mysticism. This is electromagnetic induction, a well-understood physical phenomenon in which a changing magnetic field in one system induces electrical changes in another system within its range. When two people are in physical proximity, their heart fields are overlapping. The coherent field of one person can induce coherence in the field of another. This has been measured directly. Researchers have documented what they call field coupling between individuals, where the heart rhythm pattern of one person appears in the brainwave activity of another person who is in physical proximity and in a receptive state. The coherent field is literally influencing the physiology of the people around it. This is what you are experiencing when you are in the presence of someone whose field is at high coherence. You feel it as something you might call presence or warmth, or a quality of aliveness that seems to radiate from them. You are not imagining it. You are experiencing the real electromagnetic effect of their coherent field on your own system. Your heart rhythm is being gently entrained toward their pattern. Your neurological state is being influenced by their broadcast. And this is what you are doing to every room you enter, every conversation you have, every collaboration you participate in. You are broadcasting constantly. The only question is what the broadcast is carrying. When you walk into a room in the waiting state, in the incoherent broadcast of someone who has not resolved their identity signal, the people around you feel something. They may not have language for it. They may not consciously register it. But their fields are receiving your broadcast and responding to it. The incoherence in your field produces a subtle dissonance in theirs. The static in your signal reaches them as something they might describe as a vague discomfort, or a sense that something is off, or simply a slight withdrawal of their own openness and availability. This is not their judgment of you. This is electromagnetic field interaction. It is physics, and it means that the internal state you bring into a room, into a meeting, into a conversation, into an opportunity, is not private. It is not contained within you. It is already in the space before you have said a word. It is already shaping what is possible before the interaction has begun. When you walk into a room in the coherent state, in the resolved broadcast of someone who has made the decision and is moving from that decision, the effect is the opposite. The people around you feel something they might call presence, or confidence, or a quality of clarity. Their fields are being influenced toward coherence by yours. Their own neurological states are being gently shifted toward greater openness and clarity. The possibilities in the room expand because the field quality in the room has expanded. This is why the people who seem to create momentum that builds on itself are not simply working harder or being luckier. They are broadcasting a coherent signal into every interaction. And that signal is producing field effects in the people and systems around them that open pathways, create alignments, generate the conditions under which opportunity can be recognized and seized. They are not waiting for the conditions to be right. They are generating the field conditions that make the right conditions possible. You have experienced this. You have walked into situations in two different field states and felt the difference in what was available to you. You have had conversations where something in the room seemed to open, where the other person seemed to lean in, where the possibilities seemed to multiply. And you have had conversations where the opposite happened, where the room seemed to contract, where the other person seemed to withdraw, where the possibilities seemed to recede. The external conditions of those two conversations may have been similar. The field states you brought to them were not. What I want you to understand is that this is not random. It is not luck or chemistry or the alignment of circumstances. It is the measurable effect of your broadcast on the electromagnetic environment you are creating around yourself. And it is something you can become conscious of and begin to direct. I want to pause here and ask you something genuinely. Have you ever felt your own field shift? A moment when you walked into a room and something in you was different, more settled, more present, and you could feel the space respond to that? Or a moment when someone near you seemed to soften or open up in a way you could not explain? Drop that experience in the comments. I want to hear what you have noticed in your own field, because these moments of awareness are themselves a form of coherence, and sharing them builds something real between us. There is a specific phenomenon that happens in the field of someone who is in the waiting state that I want to name precisely, because naming it is part of how you begin to see it in yourself. It is what I call the coherence collapse in the approach moment. Here is how it works. You have a direction. You have something you want to build or create or move toward. In the abstract, in the planning phase, in the thinking about it phase, your field can maintain a certain level of coherence. The direction feels possible. The vision feels real. There is a quality of aliveness to the intention that produces something close to coherent resonance in the heart's field. But then the approach moment arrives. The moment when the abstract becomes concrete, when the direction requires an actual step, when the vision requires an actual action, when the person you have been thinking about becoming requires you to actually behave like that person, right now, in this specific situation. And in that moment, something happens in the field. The coherence that was present in the planning phase collapses. The heart rhythm shifts from its ordered pattern to its jagged, incoherent pattern. The perception narrows. The frontal cortex loses its synchronization with the heart's signal. The amygdala becomes more dominant, and from within that narrowed, threat-focused, perceptual state, the step that seemed possible in the abstract seems suddenly much less certain. The ground seems less solid. The preparation seems less complete. The timing seems less right. This is the coherence collapse, and it is the precise mechanism through which waiting perpetuates itself. The planning state produces enough coherence to sustain the vision. The approach moment produces a coherence collapse that makes the step seem premature. And so you return to the planning state, where the coherence returns, and the vision feels possible again, and the cycle continues. The people who move before they feel ready have learned, consciously or unconsciously, to maintain their field coherence through the approach moment. They have developed the capacity to keep the heart's signal organized in the precise moment when the incoherence collapse is most likely to occur. And this is not a personality trait. It is a learned field skill. It is something that can be practiced and developed. The way you develop it is by doing exactly what you practiced a few minutes ago, but specifically in the approach moment. In the moment when the step is right in front of you and the collapse is beginning to happen. You bring your attention to your heart. You breathe through the heart center. You access the feeling of genuine appreciation or genuine resolution. You hold the coherent state for long enough to take the step, and then you take the step. Not because you feel ready, because you have maintained coherence through the approach moment long enough to act from the identity you have decided, rather than from the fear state the collapse was producing. The first time you do this, it will feel effortful. The coherence will be tentative. The step will feel uncertain. This is correct. You are building a new field pattern. New patterns require repetition before they become stable. The neuroscience of this is clear. Behaviors that are repeated under conditions of genuine emotional engagement produce structural changes in the neural circuits that support those behaviors. The brain rewires around what you actually do, not around what you intend to do. And the heart's field coherence follows the brain's rewired patterns. Every time you maintain coherence through an approach moment and take the step, you are building the neural and field architecture of someone who moves before they feel ready. Every time you collapse into the waiting state at the approach moment, you are reinforcing the neural and field architecture of someone who waits. Not permanently, not irreversibly, but actually, the field is being shaped by the choices you make in the approach moment. This is not a moral judgment. It is a description of how the system works. And the reason I am being precise about it is that precision is what gives you real power here. Vague encouragement does not change a field. Understanding the exact mechanism does, because understanding the mechanism shows you exactly where to apply the practice. Let me go even deeper into something that I think is the most important layer of this entire transmission. It is the question of what the field is actually broadcasting in the gap between decision and feeling. Because this is where most people get lost. And getting lost here is what keeps the waiting pattern in place. When you make a genuine identity decision, when you decide with real resolution who you are and how you are going to move, there is a period that follows the decision during which the feeling has not yet caught up. The decision is real. The resolution is genuine. But the feeling of being the person who moves, the felt sense of confidence, the emotional experience of readiness, is not yet present. The decision precedes the feeling, always, without exception. And in that gap, something uncomfortable happens. The behavior that the decision requires, the action that the identity demands, must be taken without the emotional support of the feeling. You must act like the person you have decided to be before you feel like that person. And this, for many people, produces a specific and very convincing internal experience that I want to name clearly. It feels like lying. It feels like performance, like pretending, like you are claiming an identity that does not yet belong to you, like you are acting from a script that was written for someone else, and you are hoping no one notices that you are not actually that person yet. This feeling is not evidence that the decision was wrong. It is not evidence that you are being inauthentic. It is evidence that you are in the construction phase. The gap between decision and feeling is not a gap that means the decision failed. It is the gap that every genuine identity shift moves through. It is the space in which the new pattern is being built before the new pattern has produced enough evidence to feel natural. The feeling of performing, of not yet being the person you are acting as, is the feeling of building the bridge while walking across it. It is the feeling of the first steps on ground that is not yet fully solid. It is not a sign that you should wait. It is a sign that you are in the right place. You are in the construction zone of your own becoming. What changes this feeling is not time. It is not waiting for the feeling to arrive before you continue. What changes it is the accumulation of evidence. Every action taken from the decided identity, even when it feels like performance, produces a small piece of evidence. The evidence says, I did that. I moved from that identity. I took that step even when I did not feel ready. And that evidence, accumulated over time, begins to close the gap between decision and feeling. The identity that was decided begins to feel like the identity that is actually inhabited. The bridge that was being built while being walked across begins to feel solid underfoot. But here is the critical point. The evidence only accumulates if you keep moving. If you stop at the feeling of performing and return to the waiting state, the evidence does not accumulate. The gap does not close. The identity remains a decision that has not yet been inhabited, rather than an identity that is being built through action. The waiting state is, at the field level, a state of suspended construction. The blueprint is present. The decision has been made. But the building is not happening because the feeling of not yet being that person is being interpreted as a signal to wait, rather than as a signal that the construction is underway. Your field knows the difference between suspended construction and active construction. The suspended construction state produces incoherence. The active construction state, even when it is uncomfortable, even when the feeling of performance is present, produces a different quality of signal. It produces what I would call purposive coherence. Not the full, smooth coherence of someone who has fully inhabited their identity, but the organized, directed coherence of someone who is building something real. And purposive coherence is a broadcast that the quantum field can respond to. It is a signal that has enough organization to carry information. It is a carrier wave that says, "This is who I am becoming, and I am building it now." The quantum field responds to that signal, not by delivering the completed version of your vision, by assembling the next piece, the next connection, the next door, the next piece of evidence that you are, in fact, the person you decided to be. This is the mechanics of momentum. It is not mysterious. It is not luck. It is the progressive accumulation of evidence that closes the gap between decision and feeling, while the coherent broadcast of active construction is simultaneously attracting the next piece of what is needed. The momentum builds because the field is broadcasting an organized signal, and the quantum field is assembling around that signal. And the assembly produces more evidence, and the evidence closes the gap further. And the closing gap produces greater coherence, and greater coherence produces a stronger, cleaner broadcast. This is the loop. This is what the people you watch who seem to move without hesitation have entered, not by being different from you, by making the decision and then acting from it through the uncomfortable phase of not yet feeling it, long enough for the loop to establish itself. The loop is available to you. It does not require you to be someone you are not. It requires you to be someone you have decided to be before you feel like it, for long enough that the feeling catches up. Let me address something directly, because I can feel it in the field of this transmission. There is a question underneath everything I have said that has not yet been spoken. And it is this: what if I make the decision and I fail? What if I commit to the identity, act from it, take the steps, and the thing I am building does not work? What does that do to the field? What does that do to the broadcast? This is the real question. Not the one about motivation or readiness or timing. This one. Because this is the question that the protection mechanism is actually protecting you from. Not the experience of failure. The experience of having committed to a specific identity and then having that specific identity fail to produce the specific outcome. And I want to answer it with precision, because vague reassurance is not what this question deserves. When you act from a decided identity and the specific attempt fails, two things are true simultaneously. The attempt failed, and the identity held. These are not the same thing. A failed attempt is information. It is data about what did not work in that specific configuration at that specific moment. It is the material through which the identity is refined, made more precise, made more capable. It is not evidence that the identity was wrong. It is the substance through which the identity becomes real. Every person who has built something significant has a catalog of failed attempts that preceded the thing that mattered. Not as an inspirational footnote, as the actual mechanism of how the thing that mattered came to be. The failed attempts were not detours from the path. They were the path. They were the specific experiences through which the identity became capable of producing the outcome that eventually arrived. At the field level, a failed attempt from a coherent identity state produces a different signal than a failed attempt from an incoherent waiting state. When you fail from coherence, from genuine resolution, from active construction, the field carries the information of the attempt. The broadcast says, "I moved, I built, I learned." The quantum field receives a signal of genuine engagement. And genuine engagement, even when the specific attempt fails, produces a different quality of response from the quantum field than waiting does. Waiting produces no signal, no engagement, no information, no evidence, no momentum. A failed attempt from coherence produces all of these things, even though the specific attempt did not succeed. The field is richer after a genuine failed attempt than it was before the attempt. The broadcast is more informed. The identity is more real. The construction is further along. This is the paradox that the protection mechanism cannot compute. The mind that is protecting you from the experience of specific failure is preventing you from the experience of the only process through which the thing you want can actually be built. It is protecting you into stagnation, and the protection feels like wisdom because it is preventing a specific, nameable pain. What it cannot see is the larger, slower, less nameable erosion of a life spent in suspended construction. You are not broken. You are not lacking. You are not someone who needs to find the right conditions before they can begin. You are someone who has been protecting yourself from a pain that, if you actually moved through it, would turn out to be the material your becoming is made of. I want to bring you back to the field for a moment, because there is a specific quality of broadcast that I want you to feel, not just understand. It is the quality of field that is generated when someone takes a step from genuine resolution in the absence of readiness. When the approach moment is met not with a collapse into waiting, but with a deepening into coherence. When the action is taken not because it feels right, but because the decision has been made and the decision is being honored. This quality of broadcast has a different texture from both the waiting state and the fully confident state. It is not the static of unresolved conflict. It is not the smooth, effortless coherence of someone who has fully arrived. It is something in between, something that has a quality of deliberate aliveness to it, a quality of genuine presence, meeting genuine uncertainty and choosing to move anyway. This is, I would argue, the most powerful broadcast a human being can generate. Not because it is comfortable, because it is real, because it is the signal of someone who is actually building something in real time with the materials available, without waiting for better materials to arrive. The quantum field does not respond to performance. It responds to genuine engagement. And there is nothing more genuinely engaging than the signal of someone who has decided to build and is building, even when the building is hard and the outcome is uncertain and the feeling of readiness is nowhere to be found. Your light is not the light of someone who has already arrived. It is not the polished, finished light of a completed thing. It is the light of something in the process of becoming. And that light, that specific quality of purposive, resolute, actively constructing light is what I want you to broadcast. Not because it will make you look a certain way, because it is the most honest signal your field can carry right now. And the most honest signal is always the most coherent one. Now, I want to give you something specific to work with. A practice that is not the heart coherence practice from earlier, but something different, something that addresses the specific challenge of the approach moment. The moment when the coherence collapse is most likely to happen. I call this the field setting practice, and it is done specifically before you enter an approach moment. Before the conversation you have been avoiding, before the action you have been circling, before the step that the decided identity requires, and that the protection mechanism has been finding reasons to delay. Here is how it works. In the minutes before the approach moment, when you can feel the familiar pull toward postponement, toward just a little more preparation, toward waiting for the feeling to arrive, stop. Physically stop. If you are moving, become still. If you are sitting, sit more deliberately, and bring your attention to the space around your body, not to your thoughts about the approaching moment, not to the reasons it might not be the right time, to the space around your body, the electromagnetic field that is extending several feet in every direction from the center of your chest. This field is real. It is present right now. It is broadcasting something into the space you are about to enter. Ask yourself, not rhetorically, but as a genuine inquiry, what is my field broadcasting right now? What is the actual signal that is going ahead of me into this moment? And let the honest answer come. Not the answer you wish were true, the actual felt quality of what is radiating from you in this moment. If the answer is conflict or static, or the contracted signal of someone who has not resolved their direction, do not judge it. See it clearly. And then make a deliberate choice to shift it. Use the heart coherence breath. Access the feeling of genuine appreciation. Let the heart's rhythm begin to shift toward its ordered pattern. And from within that shift, restate the decision. Quietly, internally, with the full weight of genuine resolution. I am the person who moves. I am the person who builds. I am the person who takes this step. And then, before the collapse can reassert itself, move. Take the step. Enter the room. Make the call. Send the message. Start the thing. Not because you feel ready, because you have set your field. And the field is as coherent as you can make it in this moment, and the moment is now. This practice does not guarantee that the step will go perfectly. It does not guarantee that the outcome will be what you hoped. What it does is ensure that you are entering the moment with the most coherent broadcast you can generate, which means you are entering it with the most open perception, the most available frontal cortex, the most genuine presence. And those three things together produce the best possible conditions for the moment to go well. Not perfect conditions, best possible conditions, which is all that genuine action ever requires. Let me speak now about the community of people who are doing this work, because this is not a solitary practice. The field effects I described earlier, the electromagnetic induction between coherent fields, mean that when a group of people are all working to maintain coherent broadcasts, the combined field has effects that no individual field can produce alone. When you are in the presence of someone who is actively building from a decided identity, who is taking steps in the absence of readiness, who is maintaining field coherence through the approach moments, you feel it. Their field is influencing yours. The coherence in their broadcast is inducing coherence in your system. You are more capable in their presence than you would be alone. Not because they are doing something for you, because the field interaction between coherent systems produces a coherence amplification that benefits both. This is why the people around you matter at the field level, not just at the level of support or encouragement or practical help, at the level of electromagnetic field interaction. The fields of the people you spend the most time with are in constant interaction with yours. Their broadcast patterns are influencing your heart rhythm. Your broadcast patterns are influencing theirs. Over time, fields that are in regular proximity begin to entrain toward each other. The dominant pattern in the group begins to shape the patterns of the individuals within it. If you are surrounded by people who are in the waiting state, whose fields are broadcasting the incoherent signal of unresolved identity, the entrainment pressure is toward that pattern. It is not irresistible, but it is real. It takes more deliberate field maintenance to hold coherence in an environment of ambient incoherence. If you are surrounded by people who are in the active construction state, whose fields are broadcasting the purposive coherence of genuine building, the entrainment pressure is toward that pattern. Your own coherence is supported and amplified by theirs. The practice becomes easier. The approach moments become less likely to produce the full collapse. The momentum builds faster because the field environment is supporting rather than counteracting it. This is not a reason to abandon the people in your life who are in the waiting state. It is a reason to understand the field dynamics of your environment and to make conscious choices about where you place your field and for how long. It is a reason to seek out, actively and deliberately, the company of people who are building. Not because they will motivate you, because their fields will interact with yours in ways that make your own coherence more accessible. And it is a reason to understand that when you shift your own broadcast, when you move from the waiting state to the active construction state, you are not only changing your own field, you are changing the field environment for everyone around you. You are becoming a source of coherent entrainment for the people in your proximity. Your decision to move is not a private act. It is a field event. It reaches into the space around you and influences what is possible for the people who share that space. This is the scale of what is actually at stake when you make the decision to stop waiting and start building. It is not just your life that shifts. It is the electromagnetic environment you create for everyone in your field. And I want to ask you something here, because the field of this community is part of what we are building together. Has there been a moment when you felt your own light shift? When something in you activated and the room around you responded? When you stopped waiting and moved and felt the difference in your own broadcast? Leave that in the comments. Your experience is not just yours. It is a signal that strengthens the field for everyone reading there. Let me bring this toward integration now, because the transmission has covered a lot of ground, and I want to distill it into something you can carry forward, not as a list of concepts, as a felt understanding that lives in the body and the field. The core of everything I have said is this: the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not a gap of readiness. It is a gap of broadcast. It is the difference between the incoherent signal of an unresolved identity and the coherent signal of a decided one. And that gap can be closed not by waiting for the feeling of readiness to arrive, but by making the decision, generating the coherence, and taking the step from within the coherence even before the feeling has caught up. The decision comes first. The coherence follows the decision. The step follows the coherence. The evidence follows the step. The feeling follows the evidence. And the feeling, when it finally arrives, is not the feeling of readiness. It is the feeling of someone who is already building, who has already moved, who has already taken enough steps from the decided identity that the identity has begun to feel like home. That is where you are going, not to a place of perfect readiness, to a place of genuine inhabitation, to the experience of being someone who moves, not because conditions are right, but because the decision has been made, and the field is coherent, and the step is available, and the moment is now. The moment is always now. That is not a spiritual platitude. It is a field reality. The broadcast is happening now. The quantum field is responding now. The evidence is accumulating now, or it is not accumulating at all, because now is the only moment in which accumulation can happen. The past is complete. The future is a projection. The field is active in the present moment, and the present moment is where the construction either happens or it does not. You have been waiting for a future moment when the conditions would be different, when you would feel different, when the version of yourself that was ready would have arrived. That future moment will never be more available than this one, because this one is real. And the future one is a projection of a mind that is trying to protect you from the experience of building something genuine under conditions of genuine uncertainty. The conditions of genuine uncertainty are the only conditions under which genuine building happens. Certainty is not a prerequisite for construction. It is a retrospective quality of things that have already been built. You do not feel certain before you build. You feel certain after. The certainty comes from the evidence of what you have made, and the evidence only comes from the making. Build now, from this field state, with this broadcast, from this decision, even before the feeling arrives, even before the ground feels fully solid, even before the version of yourself that feels ready has shown up. That version is not coming to rescue you. That version is what you become by moving. Your field is active right now. It is broadcasting something into the quantum field at this very moment. The question is not whether you are radiating. You are always radiating. The question is what the signal carries. Whether it carries the static of an unresolved identity or the purposive coherence of someone who has decided and is building. You have the capacity to choose the broadcast, not by manufacturing a feeling you do not have, by making the decision that produces the coherence that generates the feeling. The decision is the lever. The coherence is the mechanism. The feeling is the result. In that order. Always in that order. The people you watch who move without hesitation made the decision. They did not find a special source of courage or motivation that you have been denied. They resolved the identity question and let the coherence follow. And the coherence made the step possible. And the step produced the evidence. And the evidence made the next step easier. And the next step produced more evidence. And the loop established itself. And from the outside, from the perspective of someone watching the loop, from the waiting state, it looks like effortless, inspired, ready action. It is not effortless. It is not inspired. It is not ready. It is resolved. And resolution is available to you right now, in this moment, with this breath, with this field, with this decision. Make it, not with fanfare, not with ceremony, not with a surge of feeling that confirms you are ready. Quietly, internally, with the full weight of genuine commitment. Draw the line in the interior and step across it. I am the person who builds. I am the person who moves. I am the person who takes the step even when the ground is uncertain, and the feeling has not yet arrived, and the outcome is not yet visible. Say it from the heart center. Feel whether it lands with the quality of resolution or the quality of performance. If it is performance, go deeper. Find the place where the protection is operating. See it clearly. And then make the decision anyway, not to override the protection, to see it clearly enough that it no longer needs to operate in the dark. The protection mechanism operates in the dark. It presents itself as wisdom in the dark. The moment you see it clearly, the moment you name it precisely, the moment you understand that it is not wisdom, but fear, dressed in wisdom's clothing, it loses its power to shape your field without your consent. You are not broken. You are not lacking. You are not someone who needs to become something fundamentally different before you can begin. You are someone who has been protecting yourself from the experience that is the only path to the thing you want. And the protection is no longer serving you. It has not been serving you. It has been keeping the construction suspended while the blueprint gathers dust. The blueprint is real. The direction is real. The capacity is real. The field is active. The moment is now. Your light is not the light of someone waiting to begin. It is the light of someone who has decided. Let it be that light. Let it broadcast that decision into the quantum field around you. Let the coherence of genuine resolution reach into the space you are about to enter, ahead of you, before you have spoken a word, before you have taken a step, setting the field for what is about to be built. The quantum field is listening. It is always listening. It assembles around what you actually broadcast, not around what you wish you were broadcasting. Broadcast the decision. Broadcast the coherence. Broadcast the signal of someone who is building right now with what is available in the conditions that exist, without waiting for better conditions to arrive, because the conditions that exist are enough. They have always been enough. The only thing that was missing was the decision, and the decision is available to you right now. If this transmission has moved something in your field, if something in you has shifted even slightly toward resolution, return to it. Play it again in the stillness of the morning before the day's noise arrives, or in the quiet before sleep when your field is most open and most receptive. And if someone in your life is standing at their own edge, waiting for a readiness that their current broadcast cannot generate, Share this with them. When you do, something real happens at the field level. Their awareness of their own light activates. Your field and theirs strengthen through resonance, and the coherence between you contributes to something larger than either of you alone. That is not a small thing. That is how the collective luminosity grows. Make it, and then move. Not because you feel ready, because you are resolved. And resolution is the most powerful broadcast a human field can generate. It is the signal the quantum field has been waiting to receive from you. It is the frequency at which your life begins to assemble around who you actually are, rather than around the static of who you have been afraid to decide to be. Your aura is active. Your field is broadcasting. Your signal is yours to direct. Direct it now. Welcome to the frequency of someone who moves.